Now, the IEC inquiry, chaired by retired Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke, has continued to hear opposing opinions on whether local government elections can be held during the COVID-19 pandemic. Moseneke is expected to file recommendations by the 21st of July ahead of the official proclamation by COGTA Minister Dr. Zuma. Now, some parties and observers have called for the elections to be postponed to next year. Joining us now for his perspective on this debacle is a former IEC chairperson and founder of the Institute for Election Management Services, Mr. Terry Tselane. Very good to have you with us once again, Terry. Now, the postponement of the local government elections will have certain implications. Could you run us through those?
Well, obviously, it would mean that it is not possible to have the elections within 90 days after the date of the last election. So, which means the elections would therefore have to be postponed. I think there is an agreement in the society that the current environment is not conducive to free and fair elections. The fact that the IEC was forced to reschedule registration weekend is a clear illustration that the current conditions are not conducive to free and fair elections, and therefore it would be futile to try to have an elections when the conditions for free and fair elections don't really exist. And I know that there are some people who have said that in terms of Section 159 of the Constitution, the term of office of the municipality is 5 years. And there is no disagreement on that particular aspect. But if the same argument was to be followed through by looking at Section 159, subsection 3, they would also realize that the Constitution provides that a municipal council is competent until after the election of a new council.
Now, there's one other issue here, and this is around the postponement of the voter registration weekend. The cost that it actually costs to put something of that nature in place. Would there have been a likelihood that we would have been able to do 2 of these should these not have been postponed?
No, it is absolutely not possible. I mean, the fiscus cannot afford 2 registration weekends. For the IEC, just alone, let alone the political parties, to host a weekend registration, it spends almost 400 million. So if it had proceeded with this registration weekend, then it would have meant that they've got to have another 400 million in order to have the second registration weekend. Traditionally, the IEC would have 2 registration weekends. And the reason why this time around it was not possible to have 2 registration weekends, it is precisely because there is no money. The fiscus cannot afford to give the IEC money for 2 registration weekends, and therefore they settled for 1 registration weekend. So the postponement was inevitable, particularly in the light of the fact that Justice Moseneke still has to present his report, I think, on the 21st of July.
The proposition that you've made is for the local government elections to be postponed until May of next year. What has informed the time schedule that you have come up with?
As you may be aware that the Commission has got to be consulted when the election date is set by whoever is supposed to be setting the date for the elections. Now, municipal elections, of course, have got to be proclaimed by the Minister of Cooperative Affairs and Traditional Affairs, or Cooperative Affairs and Traditional Affairs. And before this happens, the minister would have to sit with the Commission and consult the Commission about the date of the election. So, naturally, if you have been part of the preparations for the elections, you would know what are the kind of the factors that you've got to take into consideration in order to establish a date for the elections. Now, we are basically suggesting that the elections should be postponed, but allow certain processes to take place. Firstly, the vaccination of the electoral staff of the IEC, and then secondly, allow for at least a sizable proportion of the South African population to have been vaccinated, so that there is a sense of security for people to be able to go to the election. So it means that the date of November, October, after October it's November. November, it would not be possible to have reached sizable number of population of South Africa vaccinated, nor the electoral staff of the IEC. Now, these are the people, by the way, who are at the coalface of the elections. And therefore, they cannot actually go into an election without having gone through a process of vaccination, because they are the ones who are going to be interacting with the electorate. So November is out because it is too close. But besides, one of the issues that we take in consideration the determination of the date of the elections, it's actually the proximity to the school holidays, examinations, and for high schools as well as for tertiary institutions. And that is the period around November and December when you have that. So you try to avoid that particular period in order to make sure that you don't have the elections in the middle of the examinations or during the holidays. So December is obviously out because it is a period of holidays. Now comes January. January also has got too many holidays, but apart from that, some of the students will be coming back to try to register in January and February. So it's a period that you cannot actually use for the purpose of the elections, because people have got to vote where they are registered, and then normally the students are registered where they go to where they attend schools or where they go to tertiary institutions. Now, this leaves you with March and April. Now, some of the things that you also take in consideration are religious holidays. You take in consideration the Easter holidays, which is one of the most important holidays. You take in consideration the Muslim holidays, the Jewish holidays. These are big communities. So you do not want to have the elections during the period when these communities are observing their national holidays. And then you don't want to have the elections also when there's a long weekend. So these are some of the factors that I've taken in consideration in suggesting that the elections therefore should take place in May. The May period, incidentally, does not have any of those holidays that I've mentioned, either the religious holidays, the school holidays, or tertiary institution holidays. So I think to a large extent, it provides us with an opportunity to have the election, having taken into consideration all factors that I have mentioned.
And there certainly are a number of them, one of which also includes the municipalities and the capacity to function in the interim. Are you certain that municipalities can continue functioning if the elections are postponed? We know that there are also a number of leadership issues and vacuums there as well.
As I've indicated, that Section 159, subsection 3 of the Constitution says that a municipal council is competent until after the elections of a new council. It would mean that the current council would have to proceed with the processes until such time that the elections have actually taken place. But besides, the legislation anticipates moments when it is inevitable to postpone the elections. Section 21 of the Electoral Act does empower the Commission to approach the person who has set the date of the elections to change the date of the elections if it is not possible to have free and fair elections. But also Section 8, subsection 1 of the Municipal Electoral Act also empowers the Commission to approach the person who has set the date of the elections to change the date of those elections if it is not possible to have free and fair elections. So if the legislation anticipates this and it is not possible currently to have the elections, then the logical thing for the Commission to do would be to utilize the instruments that are there in law to make sure that there is that the elections are postponed.
And what is the feasibility of digitizing the electoral process in South Africa? I know that you have been a huge proponent of this for quite a long time now.
Indeed, I've been, propagating for electronic voting for a long time, and I'm glad that the IEC is currently considering electronic registration, and I think the next registration is going to be a hybrid of electronic registration as well as in-person registration at the voting station. So there is progress that we get in somewhere. But the most important thing, therefore, is now to begin to move with speed in terms of introducing electronic voting in the country.
Mr. Terry Tselane, thank you very much for your time and your insight there. He is founder of the Institute for Election Management Services, Mr. Terry Tselane.